Hello, welcome to this week's video, which is all about setting personal boundaries, why we should have them, how to set them, how to decide what they might be, and why they are useful to have, and then what can also happen when you start to put them in place. First of all, what's a boundary? What's a personal boundary? This is something you decide on for yourself, that you want for yourself or you don't want for yourself. So personal boundaries will be one of two things. They will be how you wish to be and how you don't wish to be, the behavior that you accept from other people and the behavior that you won't accept. So this is about you and the environment and others around you. It's important, often boundaries are about setting boundaries for other people, as in their transgressions against you. But it's really important to set your own personal boundaries as well. It's that kind of old thing of, treat others how you wish to be treated, because if you are setting the example, other people will follow suit. It's really that simple. So decide what your boundaries are, decide what your likes and your dislikes are in terms of how you wish to be, how you are going to treat other people and how you are not going to treat other people, which chances are will be based on how you wish to be treated and how you don't wish to be treated. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Often it takes a few negative relationships, toxic relationships maybe even, some adverse situations, some form of malevolence against us or adversity that we might face, where we really need to sit back and decide what we actually want for ourselves in terms of boundary setting. Now, there's two things that play into setting boundaries here. If you come from an environment where there were no boundaries and you were persecuted, devalued, emotionally abused, your sense of worth was attacked, your sense of self was attacked, your character was attacked, for instance, you're going to find it really, really difficult. Chances are you're going to have no boundaries as an adult, and you're going to find it really difficult to set them, because that means putting you center of your world. And often when we've experienced such abuses, we don't think we are worthy of being center of our own world, because the message we've been given from the environment we grew up in, or our early adulthood environment, or a negative relationship, is that we are not important. We begin to internalize this and we actually believe we are not important. So people keep transgressing against us, and this can carry on for decades. We can allow these transgressions and it's not even an impingement on our boundaries. This is actually not having any boundaries. So we are battered around by the world. People treat us badly, and we just allow it. This isn't victim blaming. We allow it because we don't know any better, because we've been taught that we're not worth having, we're not worth treating, we're not worth valuing. So the moment you step back and say, I don't want this anymore, this is painful, this is not getting me anywhere, I'm downtrodden, and if this has been going on for years, even decades, this is a very, very poignant moment, and a moment that some people don't ever get to. If you do find yourself getting there, great. If you're not there yet, then maybe consider placing yourself there. That's the first boundary. Hang on, my boundary is I'm going to look after myself for a change. I don't want to keep being persecuted. I don't want to keep being abused in some way, shape or form. So begin to set a boundary for yourself. I am going to treat people this way, and I am not going to treat people that way. But I'm going to put the boundary in there where I'm not going to accept negative behavior from people or kind of transgressions against me. I'm not going to accept being devalued. I'm not going to accept being pushed around. I'm not going to accept being taken advantage of. I'm not going to accept, an emotionally unavailable partner. I'm not going to accept being shouted at all the time. I'm not going to, rather than talk to, I'm not going to accept not being listened to, not being heard, not being validated. So this is about placing boundaries around yourself for how you want to be treated. And chances are you probably treat people quite well. Often people with no boundaries are people pleasers, and they have no boundary to self. That's another one. A boundary is I'm going to take time out for myself. I'm going to take downtime. I'm going to look after myself. I'm going to put myself first sometimes. Here's my work commitments. Here's my family commitments. Here's my relationship commitments. And here's my commitment to myself. and not necessarily in that order either. This needs to happen. I need to sleep. I need to rest. I need some downtime. I need a hobby of my own. I need some individuality of my own in order to function in this world in a healthy way. So this is, again, another setting of a boundary. When it comes to more negative stuff coming from the environment, like I say, often there needs to be a pattern which emerges of things that you unconsciously allow to be ways people treat you, and you unconsciously allow this negative treatment, and it needs to occur several times for a pattern to develop for you, a person to then step back and say, maybe with the help of a therapist or somebody, to step back and say, oh, this is happening because I don't actually put a stop to it. This is happening because I haven't said this is not okay, this is not acceptable. I don't want you to do this anymore, but I'm not going to accept this behavior. I'm not going to accept this kind of being spoken to like this. I'm not going to accept you walking away from me every time, I'm trying to bring something up which I'm not particularly happy with. I'm not going to accept your abuse anymore. There's this setting of the boundary, and you have to sit down and you have to decide what that actually is, what you want for yourself, both from the environment and from within yourself. If you haven't had boundaries within a relationship, whatever that relationship may be, family, friends, or romantic partner, once you decide to set a boundary, most people will kick against it. Because it's like, well, what's the matter with you? All of a sudden, well, this used to be okay, now it's not okay. What, all of a sudden you've got an issue with it? Well, you think you're just being awkward, you're just being difficult. I don't know why you're being like this. And people will start to kick against it. That's because they've been so used to being able to trample on you, basically, to transgress against you, to walk all over you, to do whatever they want, to act however they want, act disrespectfully towards you. And now you are putting in a boundary, so it's naturally going to be kicked against. This is normally the beginning of the end of some of those types of relationships. It's going to cause problems. It's going to cause some conflict. And this is the moment where you need to actually hold the boundary. You need to seriously hold it, because it's like one of those things. The moment you let it go, you've got to start the whole process all over again. And it's going to get harder to put it back in place. That said, if you do let the boundary go, then, forgive yourself, act with compassion towards yourself. Remember, put yourself important. Doesn't mean being a narcissist, doesn't mean being self-centered and egotistical. It's not any of those things that you may well have internalized from earlier on in your life. This is about going, hang on, I'm a person worth treating this way. I'm a person who requires respect because that's something that's healthy, and I will treat you with respect too, and I won't do this to you, and I won't transgress your boundaries, and I don't want you to transgress mine. So, like I said, often if boundaries are put in midway or partway through a relationship, they will be kicked against, and it can end up finishing the relationship or putting the relationship, the other person, at a huge distance, which again you can kind of reframe in your mind as this relationship was based on them being able to treat me a certain way, which wasn't a particularly nice way. And now I've put the boundary in. What have I actually lost? Well, I haven't lost anything. What I've lost is a persecutor. What I've lost is someone who makes me feel like shit. What I've lost is someone who keeps just, berating me, devaluing me, being violent with me, whatever might be going on. So those are some boundaries you can put up against the environment to get yourself into a position where you are treated how you want to be treated. But like I said, you need to decide on what that is first. And then there are the personal boundaries you have with yourself, especially if you want to move forward in life or pull yourself out of some deep, dark pit or some kind of rut, bad routine that you're in, bad way of living. So my personal boundary is I'm going to make sure I get up at the same time every day. I'm going to make sure I go to bed and get enough sleep. I'm going to make sure I engage in that exercise. I'm going to eat healthier. I'm going to pursue more healthier things. I'm going to make time for myself. I'm going to indulge in my passions on a regular basis because they recharge me, they re-energize me. I'm going to have downtime where I take my shoes and socks off and go running through the countryside or running across the beach and just be at one with nature and have that kind of like those Zen moments, if you like, or that kind of mindfulness. This is what I'm going to do for myself. These are my personal boundaries. I'm not going to treat other people with disrespect. I'm not going to transgress against their boundaries. I'm going to be the good example of how to treat myself. and I'm going to be a good person to myself. And this isn't kind of woohoo fluffy stuff. This is about actually having some self-respect, basically, and some self-esteem, and standing up for yourself and requiring something back from the world which says that you are worth something. This can even be to the point of, say, for instance, employment. I've heard this one a lot, when people are hard up for cash and employment and stuff, and sometimes it's like, I'm just constantly being taken advantage of. I've got good skills, and they're not, I kind of feel used. I'm not being paid appropriately for the job that I'm doing. Now, it's a big gamble. You might lose that job by putting a boundary in. But you have to think for yourself, what am I, this sort of bleeds into this kind of manifesting the life that you want for yourself. What do I actually, these are my skills. These are what these skills are worth. This is what I'm going to ask for. And I'm not going to take anything less, or unless something else is put on the table, in which case I will make a compromise because I'm getting this in return. But this, again, is about having some self-respect and having some boundaries of, this is what I provide, and this is what is a fair return for that provision of that service that I'm going to give you. This is about valuing yourself. This is what boundaries are all about. Self-value, self-esteem, and self-worth. I hope that helps. It's just a little touch on the subject. And until I see you again, please take very good care of yourselves. Adios.